ahead of Clinton 48 to 45% in the new NBC News Wall Street Journal poll, while Ben Carson is also inside the margin of error with a slight edge and Clinton 47 to 46. Ted Cruz is down 3 points to Clinton 48 to 45 as Donald Trump trails Clinton by 10 points nationally 50 to 40%. Trump says he is unafraid of a general election matchup.
She's got no strength. She's got no stamina. Everything she does is like theatrical. Oh, Donald Trump said this. He actually, it's sort of interesting. She said, I watched her last night, Donald Trump, looks like she practices in front of a mirror for 2 hours. Donald Trump said, I think he's dangerous. I'm dangerous. She talks about me being dangerous. She's killed hundreds of thousands of people with her stupidity.
What do you mean she's killed hundreds of thousands?
She was Secretary of State. Obama was president. The team,
right.
Two real geniuses.
Killed
two real geniuses. Of course, look at what happened. The Middle East is a total disaster under her.
And a new poll of the Democratic race in Iowa, out just moments ago, shows Hillary Clinton's lead in the single digits. The former Secretary of State leads Senator Bernie Sanders by 9 points, 48 to 39%. This after a poll last week showed Sanders still ahead of Clinton in New Hampshire by 10 points. 50% to 40%. We haven't talked about that enough.
Yeah, Mike Barnicle, over the weekend, you actually had Bernie Sanders saying he wasn't getting enough press time. Here's great evidence. 10 points ahead of Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire. And now he's within single digits of Hillary in Iowa.
Plus, in New Hampshire, Bernie Sanders is extraordinarily well organized on the ground. I mean, he's got a real good ground game. I am mystified by the process on both sides, to tell you the truth, especially the Republican side. And on the Cruz aspect of the campaign that you were talking about, Joe, I'm wondering, and maybe someone here can answer my question, does his support in the primary, his growing support in the primaries, especially in Iowa, does it translate to the fall, to a general election?
No. No.
It doesn't.
It does not. I am shocked. I'm shocked, and this is the sort of things that right-wing bloggers get very angry about. I'm just telling you, I said it about Romney when I said Romney was going to lose, and they got really, really angry with me. This is a different category. I am shocked by how many Republicans that have always voted Republican, that have said they're going to vote for Hillary if it's Cruz or Trump running against Hillary. I'm talking deep South, Southern Baptist. I ask people who I expect to say yes, Cruz, go, hell no, hell no. No, I will never vote for Ted Cruz or Donald Trump. I will vote for Hillary Clinton before those two. Shocked, lifetime Republicans saying that.
Why on Cruz? He checks so many boxes.
Just too harsh.
Oh, his temperament.
I hear two things, actually.
And his position.
I hear that he's too harsh, first of all. And secondly, and I hear this from a lot of Republicans that don't follow politics every day, they think it's an act. They think it's staged.
That's why that commercial stuff on YouTube, the outtakes.
And this is, you know, a couple months ago I was talking about, I was surprised by the Republican primary voters that said they were going to vote for Donald Trump in the primary from Florida. This is the same sort of anecdotal thing. General election, again, I mean, people that I've always, Joey and I were talking about it this week, where we were talking about some relatives who we were sure would love Trump and love Cruz. And when Joey,
well, I know who you're talking about.
No, you don't. Joey called and
Those
asked,
are the same people
who are you going to support? And they laughed and they said, we will vote for Hillary Clinton. We will vote for the first Democrat in our life before we vote for Ted Cruz or Donald Trump. Don't shoot the messenger. I hear it anecdotally. I've been saying things like this on this show for years, and 99% of the time it turns out to be right, as far as from what I'm hearing on the ground. What?
I just think I can't win by trying to describe a response to that, because I do think there are people that talk that way, and then there's all these people inspired by Trump who I don't think necessarily were that involved in the process before. So I don't think we really can put, I know, and there's anecdotal feeling about
different, though.
But see, this is what's interesting, though. With Ted Cruz, you lose those Republican voters. They don't go out to vote, or they vote for Hillary. With Donald Trump,
Yeah.
A lot of the same people that you talked about in Pennsylvania that voted for Hillary instead of Obama, they will vote for Trump
They
now.
will vote
So
for
if Trump loses more mainstream Republicans over here, he's going to pick up a lot of voters in Pennsylvania
Everyone,
and
he picks up
Alabama
10.
that voted for Hillary Clinton before. That's the difference with Trump. He shakes the process up in a way that Ted Cruz, you talked about the fall, that's what we're talking about, in the general election, is just not going to do.
So then who do those voters then, if they don't like Cruz or Trump and they might vote for Hillary, I suspect they're not Ben Carson fans. Do they go to Marco Rubio? Are they looking at Chris Christie? Are they still looking at Jeb Bush? Where does that leave them?
They're split up between Jeb, between Marco, between Chris Christie, between John Kasich, between, Santorum, between Huckabee. I mean, they're chopped up in 1,000 little pieces. That's why Cruz and Trump are doing what they're doing.
The dynamic between Trump and Cruz now is going to define the race for the next couple of weeks. I think almost certainly. There's the second question of, can anyone fight their way into that narrative? Can Rubio or Christie in New Hampshire or Jeb in New Hampshire, can any of them fight their way in and be part of the discussion? Same with Bernie Sanders and his challenge to get people, as we've said, to pay attention, because the question of whether Trump survives Iowa, Trump survives a challenge from Cruz, is just such a big story.
The Cruz approach to Donald Trump, just over the weekend alone, has been fascinating to watch. When Trump hits Ted Cruz, Cruz hugs Trump a little closer.
He's running out of cheeks to turn.
Trump called him a maniac, and he
We're going to have that
sent out
next.
the clip
It's going to
from
be fantastic.
Flashdance.
By the way, I've got to say
personally,
personally with Ted Cruz, I want to be very clear. With Ted Cruz, I was really impressed when I interviewed him on foreign policy. He was very adept. He was probably, he's gone from being more of an isolationist to being more of a Reagan Republican, more of sort of a realist, more of a, I'm a big Weinberger doctrine guy. That he played to that. So, hey, over the weekend, also,
yes,
big news. Alabama fan. I wouldn't bring this up, but Alabama, Heisman winner. But
did you guys see that?
Derrick Henry was such a class act. So
did you see in the hospital? His grandmother was in the hospital. His whole family
we
watched
have to show
him down
this.
there.
Oh, yeah. It was really beautiful.
It was.
I know nothing about football, but I like the personal side of these stories.
He was so humble too. It was just great.
Very cute.
Very classy guy.
We'll have more of that
with a
coming
football
up.
in his hand.
And he gets better the later the game goes. In the fourth quarter, with Alabama, if it was close in the first and second quarter, this year I didn't worry. Now I worry against Oklahoma. But I didn't worry because I knew in the third and fourth quarter it'd start running over people.
I was stunned at how much bigger he was than Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, McCaffrey's a little guy. He's great. He'll be back next year. I bet he wins next year.
All right, still ahead on Morning Joe, Donald Trump took on Ben Carson's religious background, but now it seems he's taking on Ted Cruz's as well. We'll talk about that. Plus, the governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, joins the conversation. Why he's no longer waiting for Washington to close what he calls a mind-boggling gap in the fight against terrorism. Also with us, Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia. The moderator of Meet the Press, Chuck Todd, and Casey Hunt has a look at a side of Ted Cruz that few voters outside of Iowa have seen. Morning Joe is back in a moment.
Mark Alford, busy
Excellent,
weekend.
thank you. Yes, a lot of polls came out this weekend.
A lot of polls came out.
yes.
Nothing like a December holiday weekend filled with data.
So have you noticed what's interesting about this? And we don't know what's going to happen. And we always say we don't know what's going to happen. But isn't it interesting? The same thing that happened when Carson went in first place in one state out of 49 states. Everybody pronounced the end of Donald Trump.
Right.
It's over, it's over, it's over. I'm now hearing the same thing. Cruz ahead in one state. And now suddenly it's the end of Donald Trump. It's pretty fascinating stuff. I mean, actually, if you're scoring at home, it's Cruz 1, Trump 49.
Right.
Got a ways to go before you can make that claim. But it's, I guess part of the problem is that Trump himself, if he's ahead in 49 states, he obsesses about the one state he's losing in.
Look,
And by the way, he'd be very mad that we just said he was losing in a state.
yeah. Cruz is in a great position. He's well funded. He's got organization, not just in Iowa, but elsewhere. But Trump is going after Cruz now. Cruz is trying to turn the other cheek. Let's see how that plays out. It's not like Trump is going to concede Iowa. They're going to go hard to try to stop Cruz there. And I think he can come back in Iowa. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion.
Yeah. And if he wins Iowa, I think he thinks, and I think a lot of us think, he wins it all.
Let's look at the numbers. New national polling from NBC News and the Wall Street Journal shows Donald Trump back in the lead across the country. Trump is polling at 27%, a new high for him in this poll. But Ted Cruz is just 5 points behind at 22% after gaining 12 points since late October. Marco Rubio is in third at 15%, and another major drop-off for Ben Carson, falling 18 points after leading just 6
Can
weeks
you believe
ago.
that?
Yes, I can.
Well, I mean, of course we can believe that. We couldn't figure out why he was in first place, but that's a precipitous drop. What's behind those numbers, Mark Halpern? Minus 18. What's the campaign saying?
National security, and that's why he took that quick trip to Jordan, and he's going to have to find a way back. He may have reached his floor, but he still has 11% of the vote. Imagine if he really collapsed down further, and Cruz was able to get a lot of those voters. So let's see if Carson's bottomed out or not. But he's just not the right match for the times, and Cruz has gotten momentum now and taken all his votes away.
Which begs the question: what times would Ben Carson's foreign policy expertise?
I really can't tell you. At one point, you thought there was a time for him in Iowa, didn't you?
I still think he may grow his vote back a little bit.
Really?
I don't rule it out.
He may, but
He's gonna have a hard time catching up Cruz and Trump anymore, but he can grow his vote back.
It is a zero-sum game for Carson and Cruz. Carson loses, Cruz gains. It's that simple.
That's literally true in the NBC poll. Among very conservative voters, Ted Cruz picked up 23%. Ben Carson lost 23%.
Yeah.
They're just trading votes.
Winning Iowa, it never changes. Organize, 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 and get hot at the end. And right now, Ted Cruz is the only one who's doing both those things.
So the poll also found that narrowing down the 14-candidate field to the top 5 contenders does not help the Republican establishment. In that scenario, Trump leads at 30%, Cruz at 24%, and Rubio at 21%. Ben Carson still attracts 13%, and Jeb Bush down at 9%. That's interesting.
I mean, add those numbers up. The only 2 Republican establishment candidates in the top 5 are Rubio and Bush. They equal less than 1/3 of the overall vote. Think about that. Less than 1/3 of the overall vote. This Republican Party is radically different than the primary voters even 4 years ago. It's just changed really dramatically.
Not only that, but as we were talking off air, the level of sophistication of some of these campaigns, specifically the Cruz campaign. Front page story in the Washington Post today, Cruz's success aided by big data. There's psychographic targeting.
Right.
And it's being pulled together by Cambridge Analytics. The 150,000 households, they tell the Cruz worker walking up to a door how to speak to the person that will answer the door.
Kristen, they actually subdivide supporters into 4 subgroups, and based on if there's I forget the exact words, but I think they said if there's a bit of a paranoia streak in them, then they say talk guns and talk about an overreaching federal government. If they are stoic, they say talk about Obamacare. It's amazing how for a guy that is nervous, Kristen, about the federal government getting too much information about individuals, they actually are a campaign that is based on being as intrusive as humanly possible to gather big data and then make up psychological profiles of the people whose doors they knock on.
I think it's phenomenal the way that campaigns nowadays have the ability to target voters so effectively based on all of the data that we give off passively throughout the day that we don't even realize that we're doing. Every time we swipe a credit card, send a tweet, we are creating a new data point that someone like the Cruz campaign can tap into. Although I will say that I think most of what's driving Cruz's numbers here is not necessarily the ability to target extremely well. I think what's driving Cruz's numbers is that he appeals to the sorts of voters who are very likely to vote in Republican primaries. And that's sort of always been the challenge when it comes to figuring out what's going on with the polls and is Donald Trump's lead really as real as it looks? Which certainly he's been in the lead for the last few months. Of course, there's really something there. But Cruz's voters look most like the people we expect to show up at places like the Iowa caucuses. And I think the question remains, is Donald Trump reshaping that Republican primary electorate to bring in a new group of people who may not normally look like we think of Republican primary voters? Maybe they're not as ideologically conservative, but they're frustrated, they're populist, and they like his message.
And I think he will bring in people that haven't voted before. But this is one of the things about Rubio's campaign. People are always asking, well, why are we so tough on Rubio's campaign? Mark and I have always said there's not a natural constituency there. You can't find a state where he can win. Ted Cruz, there is a natural constituency there, and I can name a lot of states that Ted Cruz can win, even if he's only ahead in one right now. There is a chance for growth there. And unlike Marco, he's showing up in New Hampshire. He's showing up a lot in Iowa. He's showing up all over the place. So I really do think, Willie, we now have, for the first time, a two-person race.
Yeah. Well, Ted Cruz, I think, will be interesting to see. Is he more... is he Santorum from 2012? Is he Huckabee from 2008? In other words, a guy who plays really, really strong in Iowa, and maybe that's the end of the road. I think if you look at his campaign, the way it's built, he's built stronger for that. His base of support is bigger. So Iowa, to me, would not be an outlier for him. He could push on. I don't know that he'd win New Hampshire, but he could succeed as they swung down south to South Carolina and the SEC.
Exactly. He's going to be, and that's the thing. You've got Iowa, where he's very competitive, and then you skip New Hampshire. I mean, maybe he finishes second or third in New Hampshire, but then you go to South Carolina and you go to the Deep South. Right now, it's still Trump country, but those are all states that we can all envision Cruz winning. Yeah. I can't envision Jeb winning it now. I can't envision Rubio winning it. I never could envision Carson winning South Carolina. Iowa is always a one-off for Carson. It's not a one-off, though, for Ted Cruz.
No, look, he's the second best funded candidate in the race after Jeb Bush. That's a big difference between Santorum and Huckabee. And he's campaigned in these southern states. After the debate, he's going back to those SEC states and doing another big tour of them. He also plays in a lot of lanes. He's not just appealing to evangelical conservatives. He's appealing to gun owners. He's appealing to Tea Partiers. He's appealing to anti-Washington sentiment. He's appealing to the Rand Paul constituency with his opposition to the metadata collection. So he has a broad coalition. I will say about Rubio, though, he's going to have to raise more money, I think, to be competitive here. But there's going to be a chance for an establishment candidate.
Okay, but can I ask a question about Marco Rubio? Right. They're mad at him in New Hampshire because he doesn't go there enough.
Same in Iowa.
They're mad at him in Iowa because he doesn't go there enough. They're mad at him in Washington, D.C. at the Senate because he doesn't go there enough. Yeah. Carl Hyacin wrote a column, Bulletin, Marco Rubio spotted in the Capitol. And I read these stories that the guy sits around on weekends and watches football games. I will tell you, even running for a lowly congressional seat, I could watch a football game for 2 years. Like, if he's not in Iowa, and he's not in New Hampshire, and he's not in the Capitol, where is he?
Let's get a low jack on him so we can
No, I'm dead serious. What is the mainstream media's argument and the Republican establishment's argument? And this is all I've been saying from the very beginning. They called him the Republican savior before he even stepped foot in Washington. The question is, where is Marco?
He is as well positioned to be the nominee as any of the establishment.
I'm just asking, where is he?
He's doing a little quickie tour of the early states after the debate as well. Look, I don't understand why he didn't make a bigger push in these early states, but he is as well positioned, better positioned than any establishment candidate right now to be the nominee, and the establishment leader has always been the nominee.
What is Marco's strategy if they're mad at him in Iowa for not showing up and they're mad at him in New Hampshire for not showing up and he's not showing up to vote? What do they tell you they're doing?
Top establishment finisher in Iowa. And then
I mean their tactics. What are they doing? If he's not showing up in the early states, what's he doing?
Well, he was on Meet the Press.
Not peak too early.
Go ahead, Kristen.
Kristen, do you have an answer to this? And I'm not. People always say, "Why are you so tough on Marco?" I'm not tough on Marco. I don't even know Marco personally to be tough on him. I'm tough on the press who have been saying, first of all, that Donald Trump was going to collapse for 6 months, and that Marco is the Republican savior when there is no evidence of that.
The reason that I think Marco Rubio has a chance down the road to be very strong in these early states is because he doesn't draw his support just from one type of Republican voter. That he, when you take a look at favorable, unfavorable ratings of these candidates, folks like Jeb Bush and Chris Christie do very well among the moderates, but struggle among the more conservatives. Folks like Ted Cruz do very well among the very conservative, but struggle among the moderates. I think the belief of the establishment has always been that Marco Rubio could be the uniter, that he could be the consensus candidate, that folks on the far right and in the middle could all come together and rally around. Now, that may be a flawed theory, but I think that's the theory behind why so many people believe he could be the one that ultimately emerges, because he's not a non-starter with any segment of the party, and that's sort of a big thing to go in with.
You know, it's the opposite, Mika, of Ted Cruz, who is narrowing down, he's focusing, he's being disciplined. This is sort of a generalist argument. You know, he's an attractive guy. He could win.
Yeah, well, parallels. The new polls out this morning show Hillary Clinton effectively tied with the